reasonable lingered on as priorities. And then we'll try to touch on everything else if we can fit it in. Priorities.
I have a suggestion to add, just revisiting any actions from the prior meeting. They're well captured in the notes, but I want to ensure we don't
Okay,
get lost.
yeah. I think hopefully this covers a lot of that, but maybe we can circle back at the end to see if we missed
Perfect.
anything. So great. Other things to linger on.
2025 agenda, maybe.
The things. Let's see, I left off the one that I wanted to linger on. Let's see.
New Hampshire cap.
Yeah, New Hampshire cap. New Hampshire cap. New Hampshire Climate Action Plan. Because I think we've got some decisions to make about inviting the team lead for New Hampshire cap possibly to the next meeting. So let's make sure we can pick that one around. Anything else? Election of officers?
We should do that.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll be officerless. We did the new member introduction. Let's start with the minutes. Anything else on the other thing?
Rules and procedures.
Okay. Well, why don't we start? We'll start with the minutes. We did the new members.
Bill, I was going to suggest we move Soul Smart to February.
Is that okay with everybody? Because that's probably, then we can devote more time on that.
Just with Fed Act, yeah.
Effie, do you want to say a couple words about what that is? So,
Sure,
Okay.
Soul Smart's a national organization and Portsmouth is getting technical assistance from this organization. And we've come in as a bronze member and they went through our zoning ordinances and critiqued them and made suggestions for how we could really promote solar energy in our city. So we'll talk about that in February. And Kate today showed me the solar landing page, which I hadn't seen before. It's part of the planning department. And you can see the Soul Smart recommendations from that page. So it's good to know about.
okay, anything else to linger on? We'll move that to February. This council presentation, I think, is a big one. We'll be sure to touch on that, and if we don't get into a lot of detail on that, we can come back to it the next month. Okay, any other thoughts on the agenda? Let's start with the minutes, and Kate sent out the minutes for November and December. And for those of you that were at the December meeting, we didn't have a quorum, so we didn't vote on those. And I offered a few edits or amendments to that I think, if okay with everyone, I can give those out again and see if we want to amend the minutes to reflect that and then vote on that for November. Okay, so November minutes, I don't know if you've printed it out. We probably don't need to project it. Kate, what do you think if I just touch on the things that I'm suggesting be revised?
Sure.
These were very nice, thorough minutes, Rhiannon. Thank you. I think you did.
Nice. The November ones?
November. Did you do
Thanks.
this?
I did.
You did.
Thank you.
I did the December one, so you can revise those if you like. Okay, for 2B, presentation to the city council, item 2. I was suggesting revise that to speak to the applications of the guidelines, committee guidelines, CAP implementation, Portsmouth Climate Action Plan implementation, and the CIP, which is the capital improvement plan. Never remember. Plan. And that's the revision for that. And then the next revision is on the 3rd page. Under CIP, the capital budget. To revise that, to update it, the items proposed by the committee, 2 items promote. Let's see. 2 items proposed by the committee did not make it into the draft CIP. The CIP work session covered decarbonization of the process study. Increase from $20,000 to $100,000 for trees and greenery. And a micro transit shuttle loop bus hybrid feasibility study. So these were items that were proposed. Josh knows these well, because I think you proposed one and Kate Cook, Councilor Cook proposed the other. But just revise that to be more accurate for the three that were actually covered there. Then for the Route 1 project, we had a discussion with Tyler on that. And revised to say, question for the committee. Do we feel this project is sustainable? Committee appreciates the opportunity to consider the sustainability characteristics of the project, which raises the larger question of the committee's role to bring consideration of sustainability, including climate impacts to policies, programs, and projects. So that just adds some additional text. Then last point, committee discussed project implications, including traffic, walking, biking, safety, and accessibility, and we'll consider taking a closer look in the future.
To replace the second.
That's to add a second. So it rewords the first and adds a second one on project implications. So those are the revisions. Does anybody want to propose, make a motion to accept with the revisions?
We accept the minutes.
Second, all in favor?
Right.
Aye.
This discussion is that November and December, your motion.
Do you want to make
I was just on this one, but.
Oh, okay.
That-
Just November.
just November?
Okay.
So motion is, the minutes are accepted for November, and for December. Any questions or revisions to December minutes? Okay, anybody want to make a motion to accept?
We accept the December minutes.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I
Okay.
better abstain because I wasn't here.
Okay,
I should abstain for both of them, I think.
okay,
But from now on, I don't have to do that.
sounds good. And we do have a quorum, right? Yes. Okay, so let's see. We talk about the New Hampshire cap first, and then we can go down through the check marks and then go back on the other ones. Okay.
Can I interrupt for 1 minute?
Let's see. So just for context, Portsmouth has a climate action plan that was passed last year toward the end of the year by the city council. And the state of New Hampshire is now working on a state cap, New Hampshire climate action plan. And they've been working on it for about a year. They had to do a preliminary framework that they gave to EPA. It had to meet the EPA's criteria for a framework. It was accepted. And then I think that the state, through the Department of Environmental Services, received funding from EPA to do a full New Hampshire climate action plan. So they're well underway on that. Some of us participated in the kickoff meeting for that in December 10th and 11th, in person and online. And coming out of that, they formed 5 sectoral working groups. And these are the working groups recommended by the EPA. And they have been putting together advisory groups for each of the sectors. And each sector group will meet 5 times monthly starting January. So I know that pardon?
You said 5 times
5 times
monthly?
month, 5
Month
monthly
or
meetings.
total months?
Yeah,
Sorry, Matt.
5 monthly meetings. So January, February, March, April, May.
Okay.
Okay.
I also thought what you thought. I was like that.
Yeah.
Meetings, wow.
There are 5
Okay.
groups. Each group will meet 5 times over 5 months.
Okay.
5.
Awesome.
And the groups are sectoral groups. transportation, buildings, electrical generation, agriculture, and then industry waste and materials management. So those are the five. They are defined using the EPA definitions for climate action plan. These are the sectors that are the major contributors to greenhouse gases nationally. And I am on the transportation sector group that was the first one to meet. And they met about 2 weeks ago. And I think that Kate sent out some information that I provided to about members of the committee maybe signing up for any of the other groups. Yeah, but we can send that out again. I think they are encouraging people to stay in through all of them, but I think they welcome people to join when they can. So if you wanted to join, if not for the first one, for the second one, and you thought you could make most of them, I think you'd be very welcome. The item for us today is that as part of this, along with the working groups, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services is working with New Hampshire Listens, so the University of New Hampshire, to do community outreach on the climate action plan. And they're very interested in meeting with cities, towns, stakeholders, advocacy groups. So at the last meeting, we talked about inviting them to come to talk to this committee. They, in their transportation presentation, they talked about the research they've done on city climate action plans in New Hampshire. And Portsmouth was one of them, those that they seemed the most aware of and the most interested in. So the lead, community engagement lead, would very much enjoy coming to meet with this committee and is available either at the next month's meeting, February 27th, or the meeting after that, March 27th. So the first question for us is, does the committee welcome that? Would we like to have them come? This would probably be Kurt Youngling, who's very, very good guy, very good presentation. And if we could give him enough time, what he would like to do is update, talk about the process, get questions and answers, and then strategize with us. I think particularly for us, it's an opportunity to try to align Portsmouth's cap with the New Hampshire cap. Ours is done. Theirs is a work in progress. So can we get some of our ideas into their plan? I think that's part of the purpose of having the community engagement. And second, are there things that could be in that plan that supports implementation of the Portsmouth cap, starting with money? Money, because once this plan is into the EPA, assuming all these programs continue at the federal level, there will be funds that then go through the state DOT to local communities, including Portsmouth. So it seems like a good opportunity. So any thoughts and discussion on that?
Did you say how much time you wanted?
We had talked about 30 minutes. And what he said was that if we had a good enough chunk of time, he would come to Portsmouth. If it was only just a quick update, like 5 or 10 minutes, he would do it on Zoom. So thoughts, starting with Bert?
I would like to see it in February. I think there's two opportunities here. If he comes, one, it will make us more knowledgeable what the state's thinking. And it will also help us focus on our cap as to how we can align the state's funding with the things that we already have. That's one opportunity. Another opportunity is this committee's mandate is to try to be an advisory body to the city. If this were a half-an-hour presentation on the state, we could possibly invite any city staff, any of the city councilors, committee heads, and we could be a committee now that would start to help educate the city itself. And I think that's a second opportunity. Actually, there was three. The third opportunity would be Portsmouth Climate Action is having 5 community conversations this year. Depending upon how we would relate to his presentation, and since we'd be recording it, if we have our own community conversation on our climate cap, we could maybe use some segments from this to contextualize where we are. And I think this would be a step in the right direction.
And we could invite Kurt and the New Hampshire team to come along or listen in to the community conversation, but that's sort of like a next, that logical next steps. Other thoughts on just the general idea of inviting New Hampshire DES at one of the next 2 meetings?
I just wanted to mention that Kurt did come to the Sustainability Fair last year, and I think he's coming this April as well.
Great. Tori?
I think it would be a great opportunity. I think from a efficiencies standpoint with 30 minutes and a presentation and Q&A and trying to strategize feels like a lot. So I would suggest, I think we can, as a committee or individuals on different sections of our CAP, I think there's some clear things in our CAP that we know are a challenge to influence as a city, because they're things that are outside of city control. Transportation is a great example of a lot of those changes are truly at a state, if not wider realm. So maybe in preparation for him coming, we can also have a little bit of homework to say, hey, we did this whole process of a CAP. Here are the exact places where we're going to have trouble as a city, either from a, influence and who controls what standpoint, or from a monetary, here's where we would need help to reasonably be able to implement these things.
Great point, I think, particularly because it would lead those of us who are very familiar with the CAP to freshen up on it. And for those of you who are new, the opportunity to take a look at it, because a major focus for the mission of this committee is first helping develop the CAP, and second, helping implement the CAP. Other thoughts?
Can you hear me?
Saying, and as
Hey,
part of the
Kate.
process, because I know that from your work and other things, if you had them and you were to send them in to Kate, and then Kate is now she sends them back out to us, that would be we get info, and that might stimulate some of us who are less familiar to go in and say, oh, what the heck is she talking about? I mean, so I think that kind of communication would be great. And I'm just curious, how many here would be interested in looking at the plan and sending something? This is something that you would want to do and send it to Kate. Would you raise your hand if that's something you would do?
You're asking,
Send.
could you clarify what you're asking?
What I'm saying is, I'm not a good researcher. I don't write well. So whenever I see people who have skills that I don't have, I'm saying, that's great. And now if I just saw 1, 2, 3, 4 other people come on, that would probably motivate me to get more involved.
But it's to look at the Portsmouth Climate Action Plan
Yeah.
and send what to Kate?
I think it could begin with that, and if you had the time and the interest, because we could also, through Kate, send out the links to the New Hampshire, because they've got really thorough information as much as you have time. But maybe the first thing is to reacquaint yourself with the Portsmouth CAP. But I think that Tori, your point about where the touch points are between our CAP and some things that are at a state level, because there are some things in that may be really inhibited. For example, just like you might have some touch points on buildings and energy, I certainly would on transportation. So for example, that there's no state sales tax, or there's no state gas tax available for public transit, walking, biking. That would be one, and because it's not allowed. I mean, that's one point. But one thing right off the top, if we're looking at the Portsmouth and the New Hampshire CAP, is they are very cautious about policy. recommendation. So that will certainly be something that's important to come up in the meeting. Other thoughts on that? Yeah.
Kind of building off what you guys are saying, you were talking about like the goals coming out of him visiting us would be that we have a better understanding and that he has an understanding of what our priorities are and what we want to see in it. So I think Tori's comment about doing the research prior for either splitting up by section or having each individual do their research. I guess kind of the question is, do we want the group synthesis of that research to be done in person, either at the February committee meeting to prep for a March presentation, or outside of official committee time before we get to the February meeting so we can present then, or over email assisted by the lovely Kate. So, you know, how do you guys best receive information? Email might be the best way if you want to be able to read it and sit down with it, but if the February meeting is needed for us to, as a group, have a good sense of everything going on and what we would want to say to Kurt, then I would say let's have him come in March, or let's schedule some sort of like mini group, working group thing to meet before the February meeting to go over it.
Kate, do you want to say something about how we communicate with each other? Because there's a protocol on that.
Yeah, it's complicated, but not that complicated. But since we're standing committee, we can't do anything or send any emails or have a meeting outside of our regular meetings with at least a quorum or more of people, which I think by now is 8 or 9 people. It might be 9 now that we have 2 more members.
Oh.
But so usually the best way is either to talk about something at a regular meeting and plan to send it out at the meeting to send it out at a later date through me. Or what we have sort of gotten in the habit of doing the last few years is members sending things to me outside of meetings asking to disseminate, which is fine for like news articles and things like that, and just information to be apprised of, but like business meeting materials and stuff like that probably should be decided at a meeting and then requested.
How about something like, if we wanted to simplify it and not drag it out 2 months and get Kurt while he's available in February and still do some preparation, maybe see if we've got anybody that would like to just tee up a few questions and key points on these, because the New Hampshire CAP is organized around these 5 sectors, the buildings, the energy, the transportation. Send those to you. If it's just questions and points for the agenda that we would want to cover with Kurt, could we do that? Let's say in between that meeting and just use that as a starting point for the
Yeah,
group.
is Kurt wants us to have back and forth with him, like he's planning to
Dialogue.
present and
That was
then-
his word, was
Yeah.
dialogue. Dialogue on strategies. So I think that's what he's really looking for. It's not a static presentation, like here's what we're doing. Effie?
And Kate, if I understood you right, that leaves the possibility of us having work sessions with up to 8 of us. And usually, you know, over coffee, we've had work sessions and it's been 3 or 4 people and that works well. But that's within the right to know laws.
Oh,
We're allowed
yeah.
to do that.
I just think
So
it's probably.
I just wanted to make sure that Colleen heard that.
Yeah,
As you had
yeah.
said.
So if,
Yeah.
for example, I had 4 or 5 touch points on transportation sector, because I know what's coming up in these 5 times 5 times 5 meetings. And Tori did that for energy and buildings, and maybe others that might want to volunteer for other things. We could send that through Kate and then maybe say, can we have a little coffee meetup or even Zoom meeting between now and February 27th for anyone that would like to dig in a little bit more on buildings, energy, transportation. I mean, the other things are things like agriculture and land use. So those may not be, that's probably not so important for the Portsmouth CAP touch point with the New Hampshire CAP. But the transportation, buildings, energy, waste, probably those 3, transportation, buildings, electrical generation, agriculture, industry, waste, materials. So probably,
Industry.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, so does that sound like a reasonable idea for preparation? That everybody, particularly those that are not familiar with the Portsmouth CAP, take a look at the New Hampshire Portsmouth cap and think about maybe where there's relevance for the state context. Then if you have time, take a look at the materials that the state has up, and I'll send those to Kate to circulate. You know, they've got really nice materials. They've got their briefing book and preparation slides, and you'll particularly if you've looked at the Portsmouth cap, get a pretty good sense. Fred?
Will that include how to participate in these 5 sectors?
Yes, yes. And maybe we can do that right away. Maybe Kate, you can send out the link to the Portsmouth cap, which is easy to find on the city website. And again, because I think you sent it out before, send information on where to get New Hampshire cap info and how to volunteer for these 5 committees. Okay, so does that sound good? We'll turn this into a motion. Can we make it a motion to do some preparation and to invite Kurt for February 27th for 30 minutes, or do we want to try to do more? I mean, our agendas are always full.
45?
Yeah, if we're gonna have discussion, I would
Yeah.
probably say
Okay.
more than 30 minutes.
If he's going to come all the way here from Concord, I think he'd be happy to do the 45, especially if we're going to do some prep. Otherwise, we won't get through much. Okay, 45 minutes. And, okay, so the motion is for members to review the Portsmouth cap and New Hampshire cap prep material, and to invite New Hampshire cap team lead to come to the February 27th meeting and speak for 45 minutes,
Including question and answer.
including questions, answers, and strategizing.
Okay.
Okay, that's the motion. Any second? Second. All in favor?
All right,
Aye. All opposed? Okay, carried over. And then the next question is about inviting others to it. I mean, I think when we meet in this context, it's very good because we've got the city resources, the tech support, the recording, and the Zoom link. What do we want to do in terms of inviting other people to come to the New Hampshire briefing? Josh, what do you think about inviting interested council members?
Like the idea would have to be posted in advance. That way, like if there is if more than 3 city councilors are expected to attend a HDC meeting or planning board meeting, it's posted in advance. That way, the public knows there might be a quorum of city councilors somewhere.
What do you advise? If we'd like to get probably the ones that would really be interested in it, particularly
I think it's worth inviting them to the February meeting.
invite as a group.
So figure out the hoops to do so.
How would we do this?
I'd simply ask the city clerk to post that there might be a quorum of city councilors at the February meeting.
So probably the first thing for me, if it's okay with the committee, is to lock in the logistics with Kurt, because I told him we were meeting tonight and I would get back to him right away on that. So I can do that tomorrow, assuming he's at work tomorrow, and then let you know, and you
Yes,
can go
that-
ahead with that.
That's plenty of time.
And then,
Can I ask a
Yeah.
Question about that.
Mhm.
If we're inviting other people, are we placing any rules around participation in the dialogue? Just if we have a limited amount of time, do we want committee members to be able to ask their question
Yeah.
first? Do we want everybody to participate?
I think that the invitation would be to have a dialogue with the committee
Okay.
and as time permits with others who come, because all these meetings are
Okay.
open
Yeah.
to the public, and then it would have to be kind of carefully facilitated to make sure that things stay on track. And that's one reason I think we ended up not wanting to do this first meeting as a Portsmouth Climate Action community conversation in the library with real broad distribution, because people would come and not be familiar with the cap, and we'd have to spend a lot of time But maybe we can get back to that as Bert suggested, in May with a broader community. Bert, you'd mentioned city staff. How would we invite? And that's a question for Kate as well, if we wanted to.
I think-
Leave to you and to Peter, who would be interested.
I think we might craft just something that the committee, in its mandate to help support sustainability movement in our city, is having a presentation, and all city staff as well as council is invited. I don't think many are going to show up, but anybody who's interested enough to show up, if we had 10 or 20 people, even if we had to bring in chairs, I think we okay.
What-
That's just my
Yeah,
thought.
what do you think, Kate?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. We might have to reserve a bigger room.
Yeah.
Just because we'll be inviting so many.
We might put on, say, for venue purposes, we need an RSVP by. And then, so if we only had 5 people, we could say in this room. If we have 35, we would count, and so then, because we could probably get a different venue if we needed to.
Could you or Peter handle the contact with your colleague?
Yeah, of
Staff
course, we can
members.
send something out and invite staff. It will be something after.
Could be
hours, so-
staff with an interest in the Portsmouth and New Hampshire cap and possible alignment.
There's a lot of folks that would want to come.
So when you say a lot, I think people's time is so pressed. If we get people to show up, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, and if we have our Zoom option like normal.
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And then RSVP, because that way we know whether we have a problem and then we can deal with it.
I think in outlining some of these, I don't want to call them asks or just
Touch points.
touch points. That's a nicer way to put that. It also will clarify like which staff and which parts of the city that is helping, right? Because this has been a continuous thing is, as a committee, we are trying to ask for changes to be made to be more sustainable, but we've got staff who don't have enough resources and have a lot on their plate, and so I think the more we can frame of like, this is our part as a committee to make sure that we're trying to get that support from the state level for you to be able to do these activities that we keep asking you to do. I think that's an
Okay.
important framing.
What Tori just said, I think if I were part of the staff, I would love to be able to hear that basically we're looking at this and how can we get the different departments to get the best support they can get to implement what we're putting in. So it kind of becomes this synergized. I know.
Just as a last action item, who would like to work on crafting something very short that would be maybe a single thing that could be used for council members and city staff to see if they're interested? I'm happy to work on it with anybody else that would like to.
I can definitely work on it.
Okay.
Really should. Our office.
Can you hear me?
Okay. And
Kate?
then we'll get input. Sorry, a lot of this was some of your thinking. We'll get your input. Okay. Okay, good.
Anybody
Anything
hear
else
me?
on this topic? Sorry, it took.
Hello?
so- But see why I kept it. Okay. So just to summarize, February 27th, 45 minutes. I'll coordinate with Kurt and his colleagues, all my communications have been with his whole team, so that including New Hampshire Listen, so he may bring possibly other colleagues as well. And
Hey,
confirm to
Bill?
Kate that that's on. I'll provide links right away to the New Hampshire cap material and the easy to find Portsmouth cap. And that can go out right away, so folks can start reviewing that. And then I suppose any of us that would like to take on one of these sectors for key points. Does anybody, I'll do the transportation one, and then maybe we can and then meet with anybody that would like to discuss it. Tori, do you want to do
Buildings.
buildings and energy, buildings/energy? I guess those are two topics. Yeah, buildings is one topic, electrical generation. I think you'll see that there's about a paragraph describing what they're looking for.
Yeah.
in buildings, so it's probably right up your alley.
Yeah, I can do those two. I guess the other question is, do we want to do the industrial?
Yeah,
Cause I would be happy to do buildings and industrial.
okay, and Jess Blasco may be interested in the industrial, which is wastes and materials as well.
Excuse me, can you guys hear me?
Yes, that was her mini. So
Yeah,
if you,
just tried to talk too, but audio's on, sorry, Bill.
That's okay.
She's in the car, and she's on the way up to the White Mountains in her car, I think. She would try to get on.
So we see if we've got,
We just had Kristen talking. I don't know. Kristen, we should be able to hear you now if you want to.
Can
Can you hear me?
yes, I was trying to get your attention for
Hello?
Jess.
We can hear you too, Jess.
did you want to make, Kristen or Jess, did you want to make any comments on the New Hampshire cap and the plans for the February 27th? No, okay.
Quick question, what was Kurt's last name?
Youngling, Yuengling, New Hampshire Environmental Services. Okay. So I guess that's it for that topic. And we will move ahead. Let's see, we've got,
and
Yeah.
Jess would like to work on waste. You said that was one of the,
yeah. So waste, it's industry waste materials, but we don't have to cover the whole thing. We can cover only the part of it that looks like it's relevant to our cap. And that,
So I'll do energy and
yeah,
then Jess can cover.
yeah, okay. And so that's that.
Can you
Done.
guys hear me?
If
Yes,
anyone else wants to tackle statewide. energy.
Hello?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Okay. No.
You must be going now.
Are you in the tunnel?
We heard you for a little bit.
Maybe not.
You can unvolunteer if you want, otherwise you volunteered. Okay. Let's see, moving on to the agenda.
There it is on the board.
Yeah, okay, great. Election of officers, should we do that one?
I think that'd be good. And I think Josh was able to put in the rules, I think, number 2, officers. The committee shall have 1 chair, 4 in red, 2 co-chairs to be elected and voted in at the beginning of each calendar year. So this is the beginning of the calendar year. And this has never happened on this committee ever before. So it's a new procedure. And I think Josh also put in there, if I read this correctly, that how we run our group, we can decide. So we don't have to say vice chair or chair. We can name it, and for our functioning, we can do that and have our rotating chairpersonship. We are able to run the committee as we see most functional. Is that accurate by what I read in the rules, Josh?
correct. And so if anyone's wants more background, Bert's talking about the current ordinance which exists, which created this as a standing committee. And we're looking to making changes to it. So last month's meeting, we drafted some changes, sent them out. And the goal here with this tonight is just for the committee to support it. And then I could bring it in front of the city council for 3 readings, which is the process to change the ordinance. So that several changes here, although there's a lot of things crossed out. Most of the things crossed out were the way how the committee was going to be transitioned from a blue ribbon committee to a standing committee. We're already a standing committee, so a lot of that crossed out stuff we no longer need. The changes, so the things that are added here One is that will have one or two chairs. The second one being, we're going to change two students designated by the Portsmouth School District, the Eco Club members, to just one student. Reason for that is we haven't had any students this school year yet, and that's caused us to have quorum issues. So we'll still invite as many students as they want, but just one of them will be a voting member, and that should help with our quorum issues going forward.
And I just want to clarify that, Bert, maybe what you were referring to was the rules and procedures. And what Josh is referring to is just what's in the ordinance.
Correct.
There's two done.
So do we want to look at the rules and procedures as well?
Well, do we have to vote on the ordinance as a committee?
It would be helpful if we voted to approve these changes, then I'll bring this forward at the next meeting, which is a week from Monday.
So any questions or comments for Josh before we have a motion?
So Josh is saying we'll invite as many Portsmouth students as
Correct.
possible, but they only have one vote. in the
Correct.
meeting. Okay.
Like previously, there'd be, let's say, 4 students at a meeting and they'd have 2 votes. And they would just pick whoever wanted to vote, got to vote.
Or take turns?
And Nancy, what we really wanted, I think, was part of the thing, as you know, is we're kind of mentoring them and they go out very sophisticated about government and how to work it. And also, we're kind of building a tier. If the seniors can bring a junior, there's less of a transition. And so I don't think it's ever, when we say invite all of them, it's never been more than 4, I don't think, maybe 5. So that would be the ideal, that there'd be 2 people who could kind of co-come and 1 vote, and they would have 2 kind of people they're mentoring.
Last year, we had 3, sometimes all 3 would come and they would take turns, and they took turns facilitating, they took turns note-taking, and they were really, really great contributors. So we aspire to something like that.
And since there was a transition, I think there, in terms of sponsorship for the Eco Club, I think it's still trying to get connections. And Jess has been there 2 or 3 times and made presentations. And right now, for other people's information, when the Eco Club started, it was a little minority group on campus. Now it is the largest school club at the high school. They have over 100, I think.
And the other thing is, partly because of our sustainability fair, the Portsmouth Middle School now has an eco club. So that mentoring work that you were talking about is really happening.
So should we move ahead unless there are any other questions for Josh to see if we can have a motion to approve that? Bert?
I make a motion that we support what Josh has put into this.
Second. All who agree, say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. Okay, then do we want to look at the rules and procedures as well and then go from that to the
The rules and
Sure.
procedures, I wondered, hey, could you talk about the background of this? Because we have a lot of new members and I didn't know
Yeah, and
the legal department and your role and.
right, and I'll just clarify before we go ahead. I know we started talking about the election of officers, but I just want to make everyone aware that I know we want to do co-chairs is our sort of end goal with all these changes, but since that's not approved yet with city council and with our rules that we're proposing, we still need to vote tonight for election, which is going to be chair and vice chair, but we can always change that once we're allowed to, whenever it comes back.
so to clarify, we could vote tonight for a new
A new chair.
chair, and then once the 3 readings and all have gone through and the changes, then we could vote
We can have.
again if we wanted to have
I believe we can have another election.
co-chairs.
Yeah, I don't see why.
Yeah.
Okay,
But for the rules and procedures, which is different than our committee ordinance. So something that the city has been trying to do is make sure that every board, commission and committee has their own set of rules and procedures that pretty much, we all follow very similar rules and procedures with, New Hampshire state law, the quorum rules. Having to take minutes, having a certain number of members and in-person attendance, things like that, that are just basic across all commissions and boards. But last year, when we became a standing committee, we started talking about making rules and procedures, and we started drafting them. And I was drafting them with the legal department, who has been sort of homogenizing a lot of the committee's procedures and rules. So what we have that was sent around for the last few meetings is what has gone through the legal department. And we can keep going back with changes for them to look at, but they're pretty basic right now. I would know we wanted to talk about and put in our co-chairs, which I think has been edited in there. We want to talk about unexcused absences and how that works with members who don't show up as often. Things like that. So if you had a chance to look at the rules, they point that out, but we need to officially, whenever we have the opportunity and are comfortable with them, vote on them and accept them, and we can change them at any time, but it's just good to have that on hand that we can post.
So, go ahead.
I had a number of changes to these rules and procedures. I apologize for that, but when they came out earlier, we were told to wait till they got through legal department, and then I missed the December meeting. So my feeling, number one, about the rules and procedures, that they should not state anything that's in the ordinance. You know, if it's in the ordinance covers it. And to repeat it here means when the ordinance changes, the rules have to change. So to me, I would keep them separate. The purpose section goes beyond what I feel are purposes. So I think we would have to talk about that as a committee, especially with new members. There's things in here that say we meet the fourth Thursday of every month. Well, we try, but there's 2 months, Thanksgiving and Christmas make that impossible. So there's a number of things in these minutes, these rules and procedures that I think we need to change. And I don't think people have had a real chance, new members, a real chance to look at them. I'd be happy for someone else to take this on and look at these critically. But that's my personal feeling, and I can abstain from voting if everybody else thinks they're great.
Well, what is a efficient way forward on that? I mean, what you're describing, Effie's, makes sense, but I think probably the next step would be to see a draft maybe marked up from what you're suggesting, and have the committee review that and maybe discuss it and agree to it at the next meeting. Does that?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's been going on for a long time, so if we kick it a few more months, that's fine. We have had a draft, at least from staff and legal, so we haven't had a chance as a committee to review that because we didn't have a forum last month, so we didn't want to discuss it. But we can come back next month and compare the two, if that's what.
Or I'd be happy to have a work group.
Yeah, we
and
can do that too.
go through it with a work group, because otherwise we'll be going through a rather long document. And I'd be giving the rationale for the change, this paragraph by paragraph. So I don't know if anyone likes this kind of work.
Would anybody?
I think the rationale paragraph by paragraph is important for something like this.
Yeah.
That's our procedures, so I think all of us need to hear that and hear your reasoning for that.
Why don't we make that a topic for the next agenda? And maybe you could give your track change markup version to Kate,
Okay.
and
And with rationale for
Yeah.
the changes.
like maybe in the comments and the track
Mhm.
changes.
Yep.
And if Effie gave that to you, you could circulate it to the committee,
Yeah, I think you
to
did give some rationale.
review as time permits next meeting, and hopefully finalize.
But I think, Kate, what you said about having a rationale for the changes is important.
No, yeah, for
Yeah.
that, I just meant in terms of outside of a work group, I think it's still important to go through those line by line edits that you want to make with the whole committee, just so everybody has an idea of what was proposed, and what's changing, and what's going into the document.
And for the other committees, are they always called rules and procedures?
Yeah, that's just the standard language.
Because they're not really legal standing, right?
So, yep, if we adopt them, this is, I mean, we already are required to abide by a lot of these due to
Okay.
the city ordinance. But it's just sort of laying it all out, so it's easy to find in a document that we can reference.
Okay,
you know.
great.
I have a couple of questions. One is, it says minutes have to be, send draft minutes to city staff for record filing. What does that mean? Where do they get filed?
City clerk.
And there's no mention of making the minutes available to the public. Is that intentional?
They're available by request, but they're available to the public. You just have to ask.
Didn't you
And,
put a placeholder on the
We
website?
set it up on our webpage to have the minutes there. Right now, all there is a link to recordings of the meetings.
Do we want to start posting the minutes in the place on the?
I don't
website
know what that
says?
takes.
Yeah, I guess we could post it on the calendar event page. That's what some committees do. Some committees just keep them on file to request, but we could put, if that is what everybody wants, we can put them on the calendar webpage of that meeting. So like today's webpage, you go back into the meeting archives and search for the January 23rd meeting and find minutes popped up in there. It would be a month, a little over a month after the
Yeah.
meeting, because they have to be approved to be on.
Other thoughts on that? I mean, the alternative would be to say minutes available on request on the website rather than posting them.
I feel like that might be more prudent rather than having to update the minutes, like just given, because the recording is up there. So, and the agendas are up. So if there's a topic there, you can go to the recording, but then I do think having that text there to make it clear
Yeah.
that the minutes
do
are
have
also
minutes.
available, I think would be a good way without having to go through
That
that.
sound,
Yeah.
yeah, Colleen?
This is sort of like adjacent, but it was in the same conversation, last committee meeting. Bert was gonna have a minutes template, which if we do end up posting them, having that standardized version would be really nice. And then I was asked to look at AI note-taking options. I have, okay, so to be honest, I'm deeply skeptical about AI note-taking apps. So I'm very biased against the idea, but I got sort of like a set of standards from someone who I know works with AI a lot, both around the climate emissions concerns and also the security concerns. So if anyone has suggestions around note-taking apps that they use and enjoy that I could compare against this list, or wants to do some research and send ideas, because if we decide that we need to post notes by a certain date or in a certain template, this would facilitate that if we can get it in a way that is acceptable to both legal and IT and the sustainability
Bert, did you
committee.
have a comment?
Can you post what I sent to you?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I would just, I don't know if the city has policy on
Yeah.
AI, but that's a flag that I'd make.
Yeah, no,
See
that would be,
statewide.
I think legal and IT would
Yeah.
both have a lot of questions around doing anything with that. And as the sustainability committee, there would be concerns around emissions. So just going through those.
I've used this format in several different organizations, and several people have evolved it over time. And I just kind of adapted it basically for us. So the group, you could use this would be the city sustainability committee, the date, time, presentator, facilitator, and then the next meeting. So always know what's there. It's right up front. What I liked about this one is we put the agenda items, you could put more than 10. And that you could describe what the item was. And then we could either make action decisions more like we decided the cap, and we said we're going to invite so forth, the summary, and who's the key person who's going to do something. That's going to be Bill and that. So we could, this is kind of, but then before I come to a meeting, I just say, my name's not on there. I can just go and enjoy. Oh my gosh, I got 3 items that, and like this was an item I said I would do last month, but until, this was a way to keep for me. I also heard in one of our things that maybe we wanted a permanent note taker. And, I was thinking of different ways to do that. And so another thing we could, I'm trying to think of sustainability money. If we want to free people up, do we hire somebody who takes notes? I'm just playing here. How do we want to do it so that we are in, from my perspective, and I think many of yours, in an urgent time crunch to get system-wide transition. And we're talking about our kids and our grandkids. And it's no longer abstract. And so I'm saying, where do we put our funds? How do we free each other up and use our best skills?
Effie,
And I agree with what you're saying, Bert, very much. And the thing I would add is the meetings are recorded. So if someone sees an agenda item on this list and they wonder, oh, what were they talking about waste or single-use plastics about? They can go to the recording and find it. I think the only thing I see missing from here is we should have absent members and excused absences. Because, well, according to the rules and
Would
regulations.
you read over the rules? Because I don't know if another thing about being I missed that. So, what are
if
the
we can
rules?
do it quickly, I'm getting a little concerned about the
Yeah, that's all right.
moving
And
ahead
we'll,
in the agenda.
yeah. But we're supposed to track the excused absences.
We are supposed to,
Yeah.
okay. good.
Yeah, as opposed to absences.
Tori,
I would propose a combination. The meetings are recorded. That's an easy thing for AI to crawl. And like one of the things we could do is add the timestamps when we
Yeah.
talked about these topics in a meeting, and that allows anyone to, because that's the big thing, right? You pull up the YouTube and you're like, it's an hour and a half. And you're scrolling through trying to find when the conversation. So I feel like that is a good way to get people like, hey, here's the topic and here's the timestamp that you can find it on the video. So I think maybe we could do a combination of some of
Yeah.
those things, and then it helps a note taker as well because they
can we
can.
do that without the hurdles of AI?
It would just be on the note taker to say like, oh, we're moving to the next agenda.
Just
Here's like the
time.
literal time on the clock.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think that Rhiannon, when you suggested another topic at the end of the agenda, it was doing exactly this, which is revisiting the action items, which I think would be a very good discipline. You had a
Very
comment.
quickly, I'll say, I don't know if this is a legal conflict, but if I was a high school eco member student, I would love to get paid to come take some notes.
yeah, that would be so nice.
One way to.
And the last
Or a
notes that
great
they
day or young
took,
age person.
the high school, when they took them,
Yeah.
blew us out of the water. It was the best notes that have ever
They
been.
probably
taken.
did.
That's what I was gonna say. They probably were just like.
Whoa, where did these kids come from?
Okay.
I had one quick
Yeah.
question on rules and procedures, and I know we've talked about this before. Is the physical presence requirement of quorum, is that coming from city ordinance? Is that coming from state? Or, okay, that's what I thought. So that's,
If you have a physical forum present, but there's also a member online, they can vote. Even though
Okay.
they're not physically here, but there's a quorum.
But they don't count for the
but
quorum.
they don't count on for quorum.
Right,
Gotcha.
So let's see.
But if we have working groups that have quorum and it's online,
then that needs to be posted. Like an agenda.
so it can, it's okay.
If there's a
Counts as a
quorum,
quorum
of-
unless
quorum.
it's,
if there's a quorum of members at a working group, then
Right,
that has to be
right.
posted. But
I
if
mean,
we're not,
technically it's not a working group then.
if it's just 3 people, then
so it
that's
doesn't
okay.
count.
Yeah.
But then it does count. Okay. Copy.
Okay.
I have one more question. It says something about, if somebody has too many unexcused absences, they could be, taken off the committee. There's no threshold is there. It's just not, it's not, no, concrete number associated with it.
There is a number.
There is,
It's
In the
Yeah.
city
a
ordinance.
third or quarter of all, it's a quarter of all the regular calendar year meetings, so that would be. Right, right. So,
If unexcused.
unexcused.
Could that be stated that way in our rules or?
Yeah, I think that's one of our ideas is to put that in the rules. It's in the city's ordinance,
Right,
Article 3.
yes,
Can you,
it is.
can you add
It's-
that in your markup?
Josh,
I-
you talked about.
I
it.
would rather just have it in the ordinance.
Okay. if
Yeah.
And
it's
if it
okay.
changes, if we don't have
Yeah.
to change it. in
And it says, excused absences due to sickness, vacation, or out-of-town business travel.
That's already in the ordinance, you said?
That's in the ordinance,
Okay.
yep.
The only question is, how is it invoked?
Right, so
Track it.
every year, at the beginning, like January, technically, the city clerk, collects from every board and commission and committee chair, or whoever is co-chair, whatever their role is, a list of all the attendance from the year's past meetings and who had so many unexcused absences. So she usually reaches out to every.
Oh, that's good. So they should, that's her.
Right, and then
Nice.
she will forward that on to the mayor
Right.
if there is.
So that
someone
makes sense having the notes. Beautiful.
Yeah. So it's good to keep track of. that.
Okay, so can we conclude this
Yeah.
topic? I think it was very useful. The action item coming out of that is that Effie is going to do a markup with comments
Mhm.
based on what she described, sent to Kate, who will then distribute it as an item for the agenda next month. Okay?
Right.
On that. But then the other thing is the election of officers, the third item, because it's the end of the year. Bert or Kate, do you want to say anything about that? We need to nominate a new chair, is that where we are?
I think every January, we did this last year, we didn't, I don't think we voted for a vice chair though,
No.
but.
Okay, I would like to nominate Effie unless you start shaking your head really rapidly.
Nope.
No, okay, and that we can revisit the topic of co-chairs sometime later. And I think as part of that, another action item for next month is to take the time to really thank Bert for, we'll get into it, how many years of leadership and wisdom and experience, but we'll linger on that. We'll linger on that next month. But it's been really a wonderful contribution, and the fact that you can continue to impart your wisdom as a committee member going forward, I think is really a gift to all of us. But we'll get back into that next month. Okay, so the motion is to nominate Effie Malley as the next chair of the Sustainability Committee. Is there a second?
I'll second
Okay,
that.
all in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Any opposed? Welcome, when's the inauguration?
Something I need to say and want to say.
I thought he was gonna grab the coffee pen. Congratulations.
Effie, many years ago, I worked in a program for 25 years for students. And I was kind of the senior member, and unbeknownst to me, the guys who were doing rock climbing presented me with a very profound award. And it was to kind of acknowledge, I had no idea, it was up amongst staff and things. They presented me with this award. And since I'm getting older, I'm trying to get rid of things. And so you'll stand up. I'd like to present you with an official leadership award. Really outstanding here. We're not through, we're not through, we're not through. And if we get co-chairs, we're gonna have one. So,
Amazing.
Jim's still online? No? In the tunnel. Okay. Okay,
Do we want a vice chair nominee or leave that vacant for now?
why don't we
Might
leave
make
it?
more sense to actually vote on it now. That way we
So
don't need to
it's-
come back and vote later.
And then we can just rename it.
To vote whether to have one or not.
Yeah,
Or
I'd
to
say to vote, like,
nominate.
To nominate.
if we are allowed a vice chair, nominate and vote on that person. That way, we're not stuck in a position where we need to wait till next January.
Oh, yeah. Good idea.
But Josh, in the ordinance, it says 2 chairs.
Correct, so I'd say
So-
a second,
So
like,
we just,
just, I'd say vote on
rather
the
than
second
vice
chair.
chair. Yeah,
So it would be a
We need to
co-chair,
specify
co-chair.
co-chair, we could just say a second chair.
right, okay.
Then that way, depending what the final ordinance is, if it says co-chairs or vice chairs, it still checks the box if we just say a second chair.
Do you want to make a motion? for that?
Sure, I motion that to nominate Jessica Lasco as the second chair of the Sustainability Committee.
Seconded.
You have
Oh,
anything you'd like to say, Jess?
She's in the tunnel. Okay, all in favor?
All right,
Any
I'm
opposed?
here. Can you hear me?
She knows.
just say aye.
Too late.
Hi, everybody. Sorry. We are on our way to ski for the long weekend. So, but I've been listening intently and I thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the nomination and I'm happy to support Effie and the committee however I can.
Great. Good decision. Okay. So the items we've talked about the template review. We've got that one. The community engagement can be very quick. Let's see, I think Fred and Bert and I were at the Portsmouth Climate Action meeting last night when we talked about the next topics for community climate conversations. And as of this afternoon, the library confirmed dates for the next, for two that are upcoming. And Bert or Fred, correct me if I get this wrong, but the next one is going to be April 2nd on sustainable gardening and food. Is
I
that?
thought it was gonna be the April 1st or 8th.
It has to be the 2nd because that was the only date that was available
Okay.
that week at the library. And the library will be a partner and a co-host.
Robin and Diane are okay with that, Betty?
Yeah, and Robin's done the coordinating with the library. So
What day of the week is the second?
Wednesday.
So it's gonna be our regular meeting. Okay.
Wednesday. And then we had talked about a May meeting that would be focused on implementation of the cap that we could use maybe to set that up a bit from the New Hampshire cap meeting with the Sustainability Committee. That's now confirmed for May 6th with the library. And then we have the Sustainability Fair. Jess, we were trying to make sure we had the date right, April 11th, is that right?
Yep. Friday, April 11th, 4:30 to 7 at the Connie Bean.
Okay, so those are the three that we have teed up and alongside the New Hampshire cap at this meeting, February 27th. Anything else on community engagement? Effie, anything you got in mind, Bert or Fred? Okay, and then that leaves very little, the 2025 agenda. What did we want to say about that?
Yeah, I was just gonna bring it up, and if anybody had any changes they wanted to make to the facilitators and note takers, but, so I've gotten all the rooms reserved, well, this room reserved for every fourth Friday, except for November and December.
Thursday.
Yeah. So in November and December, it'll be the third Thursday for both months due to the holidays. And just based on who was facilitating and recording the last few months, I've tried to make a schedule of people that hadn't gone recently for swapping those roles, but completely up to everyone's,
I think I swapped with somebody last month on the recorder, so maybe someone else should do the
Yeah.
recorder next meeting. I don't know if I swapped with
I think you did.
who, I don't know who can't remember who I swapped with.
I mean, since it was today, Jess, maybe Jess could do it next time. Right, and then that keeps us, because Rhiannon's doing it today.
You may
So
take over
for
Bill.
June,
Thanks.
we
I
could,
can do it next month. Jess has done it a lot.
Yeah, she has, she's up there by default. It's,
Yeah.
If anywhere my name is swaps with anywhere Jess's name is, I think that resolves.
Okay, well, Jess isn't on here again,
She's at the
oh.
bottom left.
so you're right there, well.
Well, yeah, so if we just put Jess on February, then this solves it,
Yeah,
if that works for her.
For, like this.
okay. Anything else on the,
I would put, if it's okay with you, Nancy, we could put Lee/Nancy, so that if he's back, I know when I talked to him, he would very much like to be back, but if he's not, then are you okay with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
That's fine.
You see how much fun it is.
Yeah.
We don't always have 12 items, so. Okay, I think we've covered all items except the vacancies.
So,
Say on vacancies.
one thing about the committee is, we are supposed to have a member who also serves on the Energy Advisory Committee, which is a really great committee. They do a lot of wonderful work with, community power. So we need a member of this committee. So think about it. Maybe someone can come forward in the intervening month.
Yeah, so think about that. You might maybe look
When do
at,
they meet again? No, top of your head. Might
Mm.
help.
I think it's a Wednesday. Yeah, but I don't know which Wednesday. I'll look it up.
so you might look at the city website for that to get a feeling for what that group does. Well, they do a lot of things, community power.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on the vacancies?
I mean, somewhat related, I know there's the new committee on Blue Ribbon Municipal Buildings, Blue Ribbon Committee. I was gonna reach out on that and offer to do a presentation on the municipal green building and infrastructure policy that we pushed through, just to make sure that they're updated on that, and we create that link, because some of the things they're talking about are energy efficiency and are things that we put in that policy and talked about in here, and that are in the cap for that matter.
I think
so.
that's a really good precedent for a different model of connecting the sustainability committee to either ongoing things or priority things. That's a priority thing. The Energy Committee is an ongoing thing, but I think any opportunities for this committee to connect, collaborate, engage, bring a sustainability message to what isn't there otherwise really subject to interest and time. I think keep that in mind if there are other standing committees, blue ribbon committees, or special purpose groups. I guess the building committee is, the municipal building is sort of a special.
It's a new Blue Ribbon Committee.
Correct.
Yeah. That like January, it was.
Yeah, so it came out of I'm not sure what we're gonna call, or what the committee was called for just the police station. But instead, the mayor opened up to be a much broader discussion and committee for all Portsmouth buildings, to include this building and the potential of repurposing sections of it for a rehabilitated police station, or expanding portions of this building for addition for a police station.
Essentially looking at how the buildings across the municipality are being used and where there's opportunities and when there's additional needs.
It seems like that would be a really great place to.
So on that is the appropriate way, is it okay for just as a member to reach out, or should that go through an official channel?
That's a good question.
You need a nomination for the mayor to be on that?
I know it's gonna be.
Well, I was just gonna
presenting
present.
to it.
Oh.
I think.
Like a resource
Like,
for the
like
committee.
a member of the sustainability committee wants to come and present on a policy that that very much relates,
Yeah.
and answer any questions and just create a conversation. So is that something that's appropriate just for me to reach out?
Who chairs that? If you know
Uh,
that.
I
know
know
if
Kate's
it's-
on it,
I'm not sure if it's
I had
two city councilors.
so I could
who
ask
chair
Kate
this.
as well. I just have this on.
Maybe check with Peter, you think? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's chairing that. But to go back to the Energy Advisory Committee, they meet on the first Wednesday of every month in here from 6:30 to 8:30.
I don't know if they have a chair yet, because they, it started on the 6th of January,
Yeah.
so they might not have designated. You could also reach out to the city manager, given it was her signing the policy at the end of the day.
Both. Just text Kate now.
Maybe, Tori, your useful contact might be Peter.
Yeah.
Fritz on protocol, and since he and Kate are the staff leads for this committee,
Yeah, he might know who the chair was elected to be or who's running.
how to do it simply and easily.
I'd just like to just say I really think it's a great modeling for this committee that each of us who has specialties that really can make a difference, because each of us do have a lot of different avenues where we can contribute. If we see other committees or other parts of the city that we can reach out, it does two things. It connects us to other people and then gives this role of this committee, which is transitioning. It's taken almost 2 years now from a blue ribbon committee where we just came together and there was no legal status other than we just talked and we did some nice things and we did some good things. We're in a new ballpark with a lot more leverage and a lot more hoops to jump through. So I thought that'd be really great.
One thing that comes to mind here is that there's some real value in doing it on behalf of this committee, because that helps with our branding and establish our value added. Probably a lot of us are involved in other city activities, maybe as individuals or members of other groups. Like I'm involved in the Bike Pedestrian Plan Update Advisory Committee, and I think Tyler, you were on the call on the Route 1 discussion of for the bike ped plan. It would be nice if it seemed appropriate, we could wear a sustainability committee hat on that, but I think the question is, what do we need to do to establish that?
I'm gonna make a motion that the committee approve Tori presenting to the building committee if given the opportunity.
Makes sense.
I second the motion.
All in favor, aye.
Right.
Aye, opposed, nay, passed.
And Jess has something to say.
Yeah,
You can't
Jess.
see it because
Yes, please. You're on.
Sort of going back to another conversation, but connected to this, do we want to consider other committees or boards that we are inviting next month? I'm just thinking, you know, the planning board approves all the new projects in the city and Conservation Commission looks at them, and the Energy Advisory. I don't know how many people we want in the room, but it seems like a lot of those committees and boards would be helpful to be part of the discussion about our cap and the state cap moving forward in the work they're doing.
Yeah, good point. I think we didn't get down to specifics other than really wanting to have the people that we thought would be interested and want to be involved, but maybe the planning board, conservation commission, and the energy committee. Jess, was that the other one? So
Yes,
maybe
sorry, that's the other one I, suggested, but I don't know, there's trees and greenery, there's the one thing about, I feel like it's a conversation for the committee, but just seems like there are other committees and boards that it would be, appropriate and relevant to the work they do for the city.
maybe Kate, when you talk to Peter about maybe reaching out to some interested committees to see if they would like to be represented at this meeting.
I think every group that Jess just mentioned would be great. I just am worried that having that many interested stakeholders and only having Kurt for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Wouldn't. Yeah.
The priority is really a dialogue with this committee about the cap.
We could do readouts to the other committees if there are specific items that come up and just
Yeah.
like, hey, FYI, we had this conversation with NHGES about the cap. These topics came up and we wanted to make sure to pass these along and get any like other input, and then we could share those with Kurt. after
Maybe
the fact.
one of our responsibilities for that meeting is to try to keep in mind where the potential points of interest are with some of these other committees, and then do, as you say, a readout to them. Because I think we don't want to make this too big. The meeting, we'd like to keep it informal. And, I think it's great that DES is suggesting a dialogue on strategies. I think if if we have too many people, then it ends up not being as informal as it really could be.
This might be more than we want, but we could also invite them to submit questions ahead of time. So we would have we could control how much gets asked, and it could be asked by a committee member, but we would know what the other committees are looking for.
The problem with that is that it would really take them digging into the cap.
Yeah.
Both caps.
And I don't know if they would have that time.
And I think one of the benefits of doing this in February is there may be a chance for a follow-on meeting, even if it ends up being on Zoom, because they have until the end of the year to finalize the cap. I think it's just the first half of the year they're trying to get all the input they can, particularly from cities and towns, like particularly Portsmouth, that's so far ahead on our own cap.
Yeah, when they finish the cap, we'll want to come back again, right?
And then ultimately, hopefully they're concerned with implementing it.
Yeah.
We're now concerned about implementing ours, and we want to know how the state can support us. Okay, we're actually doing pretty well on time. Any loose ends that we've left on this?
One thing I just
Yeah.
wanted to say about Soul Smart, we moved it to February.
Yeah.
And I wondered, Kate, if we could get Jillian Harris to come and speak about Soul Smart and what she's looking at with, because one thing I read said, using zoning districts rather than an overlay in that letter that you sent us all from Peter to Karen Connard about the solar. When did I say? That was before the December meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had always been going for an overlay rather than specific districts, so I'd be curious how that evolved and to hear more about what Jillian's looking at after Soul Smart's recommendations.
Yeah, so I think we got bronze and we're looking to go to silver. I'm not sure how many more steps we have to do before we get to silver, but it sounds like a lot of the districting is what we decided to do with the city council. Yeah. You might be better suited to talk about this.
People are wondering what we're talking about. Over a year ago, the Sustainability Committee proposed a change to the ordinance, which would create solar overlay districts. Like there's a historic district or other districts. And we got a report back from the Sustainability and Planning Department that said that the preference after speaking to Soul Smart would be doing districts opposed to an overlay. So that was just a memo report back that the council got, which I think he's referring to. But
Yeah.
I don't know what the reasoning was for it.
Yeah, because Soul Smart seemed to say the opposite. I thought, maybe I misread it, but I'd love to hear more from the planning department about how they left the overlay district concept to going to zoning districts.
Yeah, we can either get Jillian or hopefully Peter can be here next month, but he and Jillian worked on that
Right.
together.
Can I ask about something not on the agenda?
Sure. There was an other item, and we've got the time to do that, as well as get back to Rian to see if you want to give a glance at the action items to see how we're doing.
Already did. I think we've actually hit all them, but I'll confirm.
Wow.
Can I add one on the solar conversation? And I might have missed this in December. Did we ever get anywhere on the landfill conversation?
Yeah.
The solar on the landfill conversation?
So it went to the city council. We voted to approve the concept, and I believe there have been some discussions going on internally.
Okay.
Figure out the next steps are, whether it's send out an RFP or an
Yeah.
RFQ. The recommendation I made was one from this committee, which was, hey, just see who could actually wants to do it.
Right.
Not
Go get the business case before we
Yeah.
make it up, yeah. Okay, so that has moved through the
correct.
process,
That's
so now we're
moving
just
through the
waiting.
process, and I don't know what the last meeting was. I think one of the energy committee meetings talked about it.
Okay,
But
great,
it is moving on.
great, awesome.
Any other items to be sure to touch on, Colleen?
Yeah, so number one, just on the Sagamore Creek thing, I did bring with me the Sagamore Creek Master Plan Blue Ribbon Committee from 2015, and if anyone wants to read it, It's interesting. It's about like parks and versus solar panels. So if anyone wants to look at that. Also, just a question for the group. New Hampshire just got some money for electric vehicle charging, which they're administering through Next Level New Hampshire. And I wanted to know if there's any info on the process on how we can bring electric vehicle charging funding from the state into Portsmouth, and also if that like definition of electric vehicles can include bikes and scooters, because I'd love to put those downtown, because the rail trail drops off right near downtown.
Chaz or Josh, you want to
I-
add some thoughts on that?
I don't know enough. Do you know if that funding's for municipalities or for private entities or both?
It just says a program named Next Level New Hampshire to increase public level 2 and direct current fast charging in urban and suburban areas throughout the state. So it doesn't really specify, and I've been trying to find details on Next Level New Hampshire, but it's like a very broad name. So there's a lot of things named Next Level New Hampshire.
CFI.
This may be a topic for the New Hampshire cap as well, if you want to see if there's any useful information in what they've done so far in the New Hampshire
Yeah.
cap. And take a look at the Portsmouth cap, because it's got significant recommendations related
Yeah.
to that Fred is probably pretty much up on what's in the Portsmouth cap on the EVs.
I would propose we clarify what the funding mechanism is.
Yeah.
And if the funds have been awarded or obligated. Given recent.
And does the New Hampshire cap have any role in that?
Yeah.
But it sounds like some, thank you for bringing it up, because that is something that I think we need to make sure we're keeping an eye on. It's-
And on the scooters and bikes, any thoughts on that, Chaz?
Most buildings that you're in have more outlets than there are gas stations in the city. So for the bicycles and scooters and mopeds, most of the time you're able to charge those with a normal 120 outlet. Level 2, I drive an electric vehicle, and it's tough around here to find
Yeah.
an outlet. They did just open a Tesla fast charging station, and it's super busy.
Where is it?
You know,
It's the new
Common Man roadside on Route 1. Yeah.
On the backside of it. So that's kind of a cool concept, gas station in the front, electric vehicle charging in the back, and a place with a gas station with real food. So it's kind of a nice concept,
And bathrooms.
but it's, but it is really
Is that the
difficult to
Irving?
find places to charge here, and a lot of homes have older wiring.
Good
So it's
example.
difficult to upgrade to a 240 volt in a lot of your homes, because the panels are already full and need a 50 amp breaker. So it's tough to do it at your house. And it's also really tough to find level 2 charge around here. A lot of them, like the West End Yards, are blocked out. You can't charge there unless you are a tenant and they grant you access. So because there's such a short supply of level 2 charging, a lot of them are blocked out. The hotel owns it. You can't go there. The West End Yards owns theirs. I tried to charge in the Portsmouth parking garage, I forget the name of the two, but the one right next to Gillies, and
Hanover Group.
I think it was owned by, I think Blink is the one that's doing the charging, and the charger was broken.
Hmm.
So like it's really difficult to charge.
I think that's, and we can bring that up. So in
Yeah.
the infrastructure policy that we're gonna
Mhm.
present on, part of it is paving projects need to run the wiring for charging.
Yeah.
So that they're charger ready, not necessarily that the chargers need to be there, recognizing the expense on projects. But that would be an easy plug, is if that grant money is available, we could look at the projects that are slotted already that will have that infrastructure in place. And at least, hey, here's the locations that would be
Available
public and
if we
and-
wanted to
and
put in
theoretically
yeah.
available.
That's what they did for the Bridge Street lot, where they put the wiring in when it was repaved probably 2 years ago now. The chargers just came in the past couple months.
And there is a city initiative at the library for
Yeah.
charging, and that's going ahead or done, or what's the status of that?
Talking about EV charging or
No, bikes.
Yeah,
Bikes and
that's been
scooters.
funded.
that's been funded.
Yeah.
We have purchase order and we are in the
Yay.
process of ordering it. But we are interesting. Maybe I should bring it up with you guys, but we are having trouble with the library placement. We had an idea at first and then realized recently that it's not gonna work. But, I think it would be much better to put it at the skate park where there isn't many outlets, so then you could hop on the
And
rail
the-
trail, plug in,
Mhm.
kids skateboarding and
Ah.
plug their phones into the same thing. So, that might be our better alternative, like, we can't make the library work.
And the library can't work partially due to shade, correct?
Shade and then, just
It's
with the
solar
sidewalk,
powered.
with the ADA
Oh.
standards, it would restrict one of the corners if we put it on the brick.
Mhm.
Yeah, so stuff,
Oh.
but it is a movable system, so we just need to put it on like a tractor trailer, I think, and lift it up with a forklift. But if we ever want to move it to a different place, we can do that, or we can order more in the future if we really like it.
What a fount of wisdom we have on this topic here.
Near the skate park would be a perfect place, because
Yeah.
there's also the mountain bike, the pump track.
Yeah.
that just
Yeah.
Built out there, which gets a lot of action. And a lot of the kids on the too fast bikes there, that they hang out there, and that's the ones that need a ton of energy quickly. As opposed to like the level ones, you can usually have the smaller battery packs, quicker charge time.
I think there will be some discussion about improving bike and pedestrian access to, and public transit access to CNJ now that they're charging $4 a day, $8 a day. for
Somebody who
valet
just
parking.
did that. And
That's a topic
realized,
for
I
another day.
agree.
Okay.
That was my own fault. I didn't
Yeah.
read the signs.
One little quick thing, Josh. In the rules, we say 11 to 12 members. 7 to 11 members. We already have 12. Does that have to be amended? It says and here it says that the committee shall consist of 7 to,
Yeah, I could increase that number. That's.
yeah, because the reason I want to say it is I see some folks here who would be valuable additions, but we need to be clear, how many are we going to have? It's usually been anybody who had an interest could get on, but now, is that a number that we need to fix? How do we go about that?
So
Change quorum, right?
it would change the quorum as well. So if we increase 11 to say 13, we would need one more person here every meeting to make quorum. And we don't need to make that decision now. Like, I already sent this to the city manager while sitting here. It'll come up but we could increase at any point over the next 2 months, because as long as I make the change at second reading, it would be fine. I don't know how
And
wise it.
in the ordinance, the way I read this, there's the city councilor, the school board member, a staff member, and a student. So that's 4, plus community members, 7 to 11.
And
So
not
that
public
means
works
there's 11 to 15 total on the
Correct.
committee.
That's how it was written.
Yeah.
And there's also a DPW representative, I think, still in there.
Oh, yeah.
So that's.
Okay, any other,
I-
Rand, did we,
We hit all the actions and then maybe I missed it, but did we do an update on the draft city council presentation?
no, I think we were going to. put that. Cause that's a big topic, maybe till next month.
Did we
Did-
finalize a date? for that?
Yeah,
I have not heard back from the city manager or the mayor.
were we talking about April? Because if it is April, then we'll need to get going on that quickly. Tori?
In the changing rules and procedures, did we change how committee members roll off? I seem to remember that us having a staggered. There was like 3-year terms and it was staggered, because I feel like I might be coming up on 3 years. So like, how does that,
I think on the website.
or
it
did that
says
change
term.
with some of these?
All got reappointed when the committee became a blue ribbon
That's true.
committee, and the staggering wasn't an issue because we didn't have.
When we became a standing?
Yeah, when it became a standing
Okay.
committee, we didn't have too many people.
Gotcha.
So if we had more people when we became a standing committee, it would be an issue, but it wasn't. So everyone is either appointed as of when the ordinance passed or when they've applied since.
And then unless you revoke your,
Correct. So you're
Copy.
still good for another year.
so there's no longer a rolling.
Right, and that's in the ordinance, not the, I don't think it's in the rules, but we propose to take that out Yeah, I think that was part of Josh's.
Correct, that's what changes. So now it's simply
Completely.
3-year terms.
Gotcha. Okay.
Can I ask a question? Who recruits the student? Is that something I should do or?
If you could, so Jess has been going to the high school on a somewhat regular basis to speak to the Eco Club, see if anyone was interested. For years, we worked with Kim McGlinchey. And since I believe our point of contact's Hannah, we haven't had as much success. I'm not sure why that is, but if you have any sway with any student, whether it's Eco Club, high school student, middle school student, if they want to attend the meetings, they are welcome to attend the meetings.
I think beforehand, we had a good cycle where they would bring younger students and they'd find that it wasn't actually that intimidating and and then I think that's the hard part is we kind of dropped off that. And so now just bringing them in and showing them that we're not that scary.
They certainly would be welcome just to come as guests and see how it's going before they feel like they're jumping right into a commitment that they're unsure about.
But ideally, you would like a student on the committee.
Yes.
And the way that's set up,
It's
like,
not multiple who, they have one, maybe they have one vote, but they could
They
come
could
as a group, which is how we've had in the past. Like they kind of support each other and rotate for their vote, but they're all here.
and Nancy, the way that's written is it's essentially if a student shows up, they can vote.
Yes.
But if 5 comes up, they get 1 vote. If 2 show up, they get 1 vote. They don't need the same students. Ideally, they would be, but that's,
It leaves
it's
it
not like we
open.
need a name that's appointed and voted on. It's just, hey, if you're a student and you're here, you could fill that
And
slot.
ideally, there'd be more than one interested and they could work out among themselves what their schedules are and what topics they're interested in, and be sure.
And I have one quick alibi. The building committee, which was discussed, will be meeting on February 12th at 3 p.m. and counselors Kate Cook and John Tabor are co-chairing it. And I'll leave it at that.
Any other items, action items? We've covered an awful lot. So I think we've got enough time for a good closeout, which we always do, which is takeaways. Do we do that on the camera or
On the recording.
on the recording or off? No,
Let's want to.
nope.
Okay.
It's good. Okay, so just as a takeaway,